Oh, you're here. Good. I was hoping for company. You see, I've got stories, dark ones, chilling ones, the kind that keep you up at night. Mythical creatures, curses, horrors you can't escape. Shall we begin? Don't worry, I won't bite. Much.
I never believed in reincarnation, at least not before I went abroad. But everything changed after what I saw firsthand. That's the story I'm about to tell you. It was sometime in October years ago when I went to Nelson, a small town in New Zealand, to attend a language school. Back when I was still in Beijing, a representative from the only polytechnic college in the town came to recruit students. It was sort of like a community college. Honestly, I had no idea where Nelson was on the map. I knew nothing about school applications either. Everything was arranged by an agency. They told me the town had good public safety, cheap tuition for language study, low cost of living, and very few Chinese people, so it would be better for language immersion. Turns out they weren't lying. Nelson was actually a lovely place. I enrolled in a 6-month English course, and the school set me up with a local Kiwi couple for a homestay. We didn't have kids and lived really close to campus. After settling in, I noticed their house was located in a quiet and cozy residential area north of the school. It was a red brick house with wind chimes hanging by the door. The couple seemed to be in their late 30s. The wife always wore turtleneck sweaters and both were friendly and warm. The husband's name was James and the wife was Anna. James was a self-employed home builder, the kind who takes on projects and builds houses on his own. Anna worked in social services, specifically with children. She worked part-time, about 25 hours a week, so she was home more often. I ended up chatting with her quite a bit. Back then my English was basically zero. I could read a bit, but my spoken English was non-existent. I mostly communicated with gestures and broken words. Before I moved in, there was already a Korean girl living there. They told me her name was Sihu. That's what was written on a piece of paper in Chinese characters. I thought it was a strange name, but maybe it meant something else in Korean. She lived in the room across from mine. I didn't meet her until dinner on the 2nd or 3rd day. She looked around my age and spoke English a lot better than I did. She had short hair and dressed kind of tomboyish, cool and confident with a bit of an edge. Life at the homestay was pretty routine. We made our own breakfast. There were eggs, milk, cereal in the kitchen. Lunch was at school and dinner was cooked by the host couple. After dinner, we all helped clean up. That was when we chat and practice English. Unlike me, who felt totally out of place at first, Sihu acted like she'd lived there her whole life. She'd often get up early and make my breakfast too. She'd clean the house, vacuum, and tidy up without being asked. She also liked sitting alone in the backyard smoking. When Anna was cooking and needed something, Sihu always knew exactly where it was and would hand it to her without hesitation. I figured she might just be a natural people pleaser. About a month passed like that. My English improved to the point where I could at least hold simple conversations. I started talking more with Sihu. We'd often stay up late chatting in the living room or rent horror movies to watch together. Her company helped ease the fear I felt from being in a strange foreign country. But sometimes the things she said were off. One night, we had a bit of beer. I'm not a drinker. Half a can and I was already dizzy. But she could drink a 6-pack without even turning red. The only thing that changed was she talked more. That night I asked her why she came all the way to such a remote little town. She said she came here on purpose, specifically to stay with James and Anna, that it was only after she arrived that they started taking in young boarders. Before that, they had never hosted foreigners. That really piqued my curiosity. I asked why. Why travel all the way from Korea just to live here? She said she came here to be reborn. Since she was little, she had the ability to foresee things, not like winning the lottery or anything, but visual premonitions. And she didn't get to choose what she saw. They came to her in dreams while she slept, like images entering her mind. Her earliest memory of this was when she was 6. She dreamed that her grandmother was going to die. In the dream, her grandma stood in her room and told her she was leaving, and that one day Sihu must go far away, where a blonde-haired mother would be waiting for her. She warned her that if she missed the chance to go, she'd come back as an animal. The dream stayed with her even after she woke up. The next day she told her parents, and they laughed it off, because the grandmother was totally fine. But that afternoon her grandma had a massive heart attack and died in the hospital. After that she had many more visions. She said most of them came true. Some were a bit different in detail, but the outcomes were always close. She was especially good at predicting the gender of unborn babies. Never got it wrong. To be honest, I didn't believe her at first. I'd seen plenty of mystical stuff back in China. All scams, especially in the 90s. It was also rampant. Even as a kid, I knew not to believe in miracle powers. So I never brought it up again with her. The 4 of us, me, Sihu, and the host couple, got along pretty well. A few months went by like that. I passed my IELTS and met the university's entry requirements. Since the tuition was cheap and the diploma wasn't considered any less valuable, I decided to stay in Nelson and study economics. I forgot to mention, unlike me, Sihu wasn't there to study long term. She only took English classes for 3 months, and the rest of her time was spent just traveling around. Her family was pretty well off. She said her parents and sister were running a business in the US. James had this second-hand old car. Not pretty, but it worked. Sihu bought it off him for a few $100 and was always taking it out for little road trips. On weekends, she'd take me along to explore all kinds of places. Farms, vineyards, national parks, church events, small towns nearby, beaches, you name it. Thinking back on it now, those were some of the most relaxing and carefree days. Most of us Chinese international students were there to study, get degrees, find jobs, and maybe even apply for permanent residency someday. But Sihu? She didn't have any of those worries. I really envied her for that. She was great at drinking and told me she started smoking when she was 16. She had this cool, slightly street-smart vibe, dressed in an androgynous, kind of punky style. There was a bar in town with pool tables and slot machines. She loved hanging out there. A lot of Koreans went there too. One night around 11, James and Anna were already asleep and I was the only one still up, watching TV. Suddenly I saw police lights flashing outside. Then came loud banging on the door. I ran to open it while shouting for James and Anna. 2 cops stood outside. They said they'd been trying to call James but couldn't reach him. They came in and asked us some basic questions. Then they dropped a bomb on us. Sihu had been drinking at the bar, drove off afterwards, and while out on the highway, nearly collided head-on with a truck. She swerved to avoid it and crashed in into a large rock. The injuries were severe and she was being rushed into surgery. The three of us hurried to the hospital and waited outside the operating room for hours. Even after surgery, things didn't look good. She was placed in the ICU. We were allowed to visit her one at a time. Anna said her family was on their way. Even though she was in critical condition, Sihu had moments where she was awake and could still speak, though very faintly. When it was my turn to see her, she told me not to worry. She said she'd be back again, that everything was already planned, that I shouldn't be sad. I had no idea what she meant at the time. Her parents and sister eventually arrived. Though they lived in the US, their English still had that heavy Korean accent. James, Anna, and I sat with them for a long time outside in the hospital park. According to her parents, Sihu had always been different growing up. They called her a child with special abilities. She bought her own ticket, packed her own bags, and told them she was going to New Zealand. Since it was a relatively safe country, they let her go. After hearing her parents talk about her like that, I started to believe some of what she told me before. About 5 days after the accident, her condition suddenly worsened. Some kind of infection had spread. Even with heavy antibiotics, nothing worked. Her lungs failed, and just like that, she was gone. Her parents said they wouldn't authorize more extreme measures to keep her alive. They said Sihu had always known her fate. The day she died, the weather was beautiful, sunny and bright, but out of nowhere there was a sudden sun shower. Her family later took her ashes and flew back. I stayed on, still living with James and Anna. Not long after, Anna, who had been struggling with infertility for years, suddenly announced she was pregnant. The couple had been devastated by Sihu's sudden passing, but this news brought back joy and hope. It made me feel like life was starting to bloom again. I even went with Anna to her prenatal checkups. The midwife said everything looked great. The baby was healthy. I shared with Anna some traditional Chinese postpartum practices, like staying indoors for a month and avoiding cold drinks. She said that sounded terrifying. Then the baby was born. Anna went on maternity leave. The house felt completely different with the baby around. I was so happy for them. The baby was a girl, and by 3 months, she was already chubby like a doll. They named her Chloe. Chloe was extraordinary from the very start. She stood on her own at 8 months, started saying words at 1 year. And animals, our cat, the neighbor's dogs, were all drawn to her. I saw it myself. She and our cat Meatball seemed to communicate perfectly. It wasn't just cute, it was like they really understood each other. Chloe could even train Meatball to use the toilet, fetch her shoes like a little police dog, and neighborhood dogs listened to her like she was their pack leader. And remember, she was only a year old then. She loved playing in my room. Her gestures, her expressions, they constantly reminded me of Sihu. By the time Chloe turned 2, I was about to graduate. The more I watched her, the more I was convinced this was Sihu, reborn. Anna and James had the same feeling. Most of the time, Chloe acted like any other toddler. But now and then, her movements, her attitude, everything was just like Sihu. Anna once told me that while Sihu was in the hospital, still able to speak a little, she grabbed Anna's hand and called her Mom. Anna thought it was just trauma speaking, that in a foreign country and near death, Sihu just missed her mom. She comforted her, saying, "Don't worry, Mom's here." But looking back, she wondered, did Sihu already know she'd be coming back to this family? We talked about this reincarnation stuff so many times, but none of us really understood how it worked. James said maybe Chloe was just a very imaginative kid. Some children are like that, quirky and otherworldly. After I graduated, I had to find a job. There weren't many opportunities in the small town, so I had to leave. Without a proper job, I couldn't get a work visa anyway. When I left, Chloe was not even 3 yet. She didn't seem to remember anything from a past life, but everything about her, her eyes, the way she talked, her vibe, reminded me of Sihu, especially the stories Sihu once told me about her childhood. So many of them mirrored Chloe's experiences. For example, Chloe would often have strange dreams that seemed to predict things. One time she said Anna's cousin was going to have a baby, even though she wasn't pregnant at the time. A month later, she really was. Chloe also told me I'd find work if I went north. When I got to Auckland, a friend called me the same day to say their store needed help. I immediately thought of Chloe. Anna and James and I stayed in touch all these years. Chloe is now a teenager. She looks like a typical Kiwi girl, but her thinking, her style, her personality, all still remind me so much of Sihu. Chloe might not have the same intense psychic abilities, but there's one thing she's never gotten wrong: telling the gender of unborn babies, just like Sihu. She doesn't go around telling people, of course, just shares it quietly with her parents or me. Last year, Chloe had a big birthday party. Her parents threw a huge celebration, and I went. She's tall and skinny now, with short hair and a bit of a punk look. When she saw me, she threw her arms around me like a little kid. I noticed they had a golden retriever now, and just like when she was little, Chloe could communicate with the dog effortlessly, like on a human level. If I said the same things to the dog, like, "Close the door," it clearly didn't understand. But Chloe? The dog just got it. That's another one of her mysterious little gifts. I also remembered something on the day Suhu's parents flew home. Her father said something like, "Our job was to care for her body. Now she's off to a new place." James, Anna, and I all believe she was reincarnated. They even read tons of articles and books on the topic. Once smartphones and the internet became widespread, they kept sending me stuff. Still, they never wanted to make a public thing out of it or seek help to unravel the mystery. They believe that having a magical child like Chloe in their lives is a once-in-many lifetimes blessing. So they just want to cherish her and live a peaceful life.